What's up, guys? Steven here today, and today I wanted to talk to you about positioning and kind of the weird way that I see it, right? So, if you've kind of been watching this series, I'm always essentially urging this idea of like being spiritually connected to your teammates and also this idea of how everything moves in tandem with each other, so flow, right? And then playing with the team swag, with the team energy, and going with that as opposed to trying to like brute force everything by yourself and essentially causing way more work for yourself than necessary, thereby most of the time leading in like lost opportunities, lost turnovers, and all this shit, right? So one way I recently just kind of struck to me as to how positioning works is to think of this model. It's called so there's this really good physical therapist, massage therapist trainer, right? His name is Tom Myers, and he has this fundamentally incredible idea, which is the idea of approaching massage therapy from an approach of structural integrity, right? He essentially pulls out this little model thing. You've probably seen it around at different, like maybe dental offices or somewhere out. It's connected. It's like metal poles, and they're all connected by strings. I'll link a picture of it right here.
This is kind of taking the sailboat idea to an extreme. These tensegrity structures were invented by Kenneth Nelson, a sculptor, and popularized by Buckminster Fuller, a designer in the 1960s. It works off a whole new geometry. But if you look here carefully, you'll see that the dowels are supported in a balanced way, without even touching each other, by the balance of the rubber bands. And the body is very much the same way. If you disappear all these rubber bands, all the dowels would clatter to the floor. And the same thing is true of the body. If you disappeared all the soft tissue, all the bones would clatter to the floor. We have this kind of illusion because we look at those skeletons in the classroom. They're all wired together, so we think of the skeleton as a solid framework on which the muscles work, but it's not that way at all. The bones float in the soft tissue in the same way that these dowels float inside the rubber bands. Now, when you start to look at these structures, they have a bunch of interesting properties that are very much like the properties bodies have. If I create a shortness in this part of the soft tissue, you can see that the whole structure deforms in a way. Let's see if I can keep it still enough here so that you can see that. See how the whole structure goes? So I could have a shortness over in this part of the body and be complaining of pain over in this part where it's changing. The same thing is true of structural body work. You can have somebody saying, oh, the pain's in my neck. And I start to work over here and they say, no, the pain's up here in my neck. I say, well, that may be where you're hurting, but this is where the problem is. This is where the shortness is. Kind of bone manipulation techniques like chiropractic and osteopathy tend to look at knocking the bones back into place, which can also work to restore balance to the structure of the body. But long-term chronic postural difficulties are often set in the soft tissue in such a way that resetting the bones simply won't last. The soft tissue will again pull the bones out of place. So what we're looking at here in terms of what we want is an even, balanced tone across the myofasciae of the body so that the bones will stay lightly, easily floating in place. The anatomy train's theory is looking at how the myofasciae of the body cover the bones, not just this muscle going from here to here, but in the series of continuous rubber bands that work their way around the human structure, which is a good deal more complicated than this structure, so that we can achieve the kind of balance that leads to ease and harmony and lack of pain.
But essentially, the idea is that when you pull on a metal pole, what happens is it changes the entire tension forces and dynamics of the entire model. So if you pull on something here, something else over here will contract and come in. If you push on it, something over here will lengthen, right? And I've always found this idea to be extremely revolutionizing because it essentially integrates the whole body as one holistic system. And knowing me, if you know me, like I'm all about seeing things as integrated wholes, right? So what occurs on one component will affect how the rest of the components in the whole will be, right? If the shoulder is fucked up on some level, it's going to make everything shift into that direction because there's more tension than usually over there, and the tension forces are not equally being distributed, right? And it kind of dawned on me that that's also how fucking soccer works, right? Like that's exactly how positioning should be done, right? If someone is all the way out here and everyone is there, he's gonna leave a fat gap, and then what's gonna happen is all the other people here are gonna be unbalanced. They're gonna be it's almost like there's this energetic effect where everybody else gets pulled into his hole, and they're forced to kind of like shift with that. And so instead of just being firm and standing firm where they are in a fluid way, still they're gonna just be like shifting, like unconsciously even, into his hole because their body almost on some level recognizes it and accounts for it. Right? Every cause has an effect. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and it's felt especially in sports games or team-based dynamic or games like soccer where there is this group energy and what one person does will affect it entirely. So one way of thinking about it when you're on the field is to just always be aware of whether or not you're in tandem with the rest of the team, right? One thing that I like to do is to actually pick someone on my team with which it's going to be my point of reference. So I'm always going to try to play in tandem with him, right? And so if they're going up, then I'm going to try to move up with them, right? An easy way of going about it is pick someone that's like directly, is it horizontal to you, right? So they're directly on the horizontal line from you because that's like your line, right? So if he goes up, you kind of help him and support. If he goes back, you kind of help him. And then if you see he's going back and then maybe there's pressure coming, you kind of try to move in a way where it's synchronized, where maybe if you're putting the pressure on, you're not doing it too fast to where he's not even seeing you not following him coming back, but rather you wait, and then like you kind of go, and then he sees, oh, okay, and then he goes too, right? So we're trying to work in sync, and it's also almost even the same thing in offense, because if you realize that it's all about energy and it's all about momentum, and then it's all about also not who controls the pace, but who is able to sculpt the energy of the game in the most purpose-oriented way, then you'll realize that, well, okay, if this person if you're on defense and then like you pick out a player who is attacking your team, and you realize that he's essentially the anchor of a team, meaning he's the one making plays, then you can actually pick him as a point of reference and then set your defensive strategies or defensive movements and maneuvers against him, right? Using him as a point of reference, right? If you're able to shut him down, maybe the entire offense breaks down, right? Or maybe they're forced to only playing the ball in one sector or the other of the field, maybe giving you more advantage, right? So try to pick a point of reference upon which not not only are the team dynamics being built on, but maybe something upon which that is something that's having a massive positive influence on the team dynamics. Meaning, on some level, maybe whether he's conscious of it or not, but he is positioning himself in the right way. Like, pick the people who are maybe always in possession of the ball, or who always, for one reason or the other, have like a ton of space by them, right? People who, if given the chance, would do something dramatic to the game, right? So you choose that as a point of reference, and then you essentially move with that reference, right? And another way of thinking about it, also, when maybe if you want to think about from the perspective of just your team, it sounds really weird, but try to just feel out where everyone is, right? And it kind of goes back to that whole awareness. Always be aware of who is where and why. Like, who is where and doing what? Like, how are they facing? What side of their body is angled? Small things like that. And then just remember that don't be too far away from them, and then don't be too close to them. Just right. Just in that triangle, right? And it's kind of like it'll give you, it's like the optimal distance to where now you guys are able to set defensive plays, like bait people and then trap them, like do like pressured defensive plays up top that actually work, that end up in like the person losing the ball and it going to your teammate, because you're essentially funneling him towards your teammate, things like that. But just remember that positioning matters, and being aware of where you are on the field at all times will give you a solid advantage over other people who are essentially just running around following the ball, right? If you realize that they're making a play down the line, but there's way more space here and you actually realize, okay, that's actually where they're trying to go, then they'll rush in and pressure like everyone else is doing, but actually sit in the pocket because that's what they're aiming for, right? Small things like that. And just remember that every teammate has an effect on the team itself, like on not just the formation, but the dynamics, like the energetic dynamics. And when someone leaves a hole, it's really felt. And so try to account for that, maybe communicate it, maybe play with it, leave it there, use it as a way to trap, or just be aware of that. And then, because those are the situations I'll leave you extremely vulnerable, or even cap you from being able to take full advantage of maybe the skill sets or even potential scoring opportunities or anything of that matter, right? So essentially, don't leave too many gaps, because just like the 10-second model, when something pulls, everyone else is like on some level forced to like sink in. And again, it's probably why that if you hold R2, L2 in FIFA, and you successfully beat someone and then make a pass, it just slices and splits the whole defense. Because when that person shifts wrongly, the entire defense has to shift as well. So you go, he goes, everyone goes, and then it just goes in the middle. You just go. I don't know if that made sense, but I hope it did. Anyways, hope you guys get something out of this, and as always, swag the fuck out.